if you can say that one thing and plant that seed and that person goes and does something incredible, and then you empower the person that you said it to say it to someone else, you now have this like ripple effect that not only goes out, but also starts to grow arms. And that is what I hope to create always.
Spear and Clover podcast. I'm your host, as always, Jason Skisick, joined today with Robyn LaLonde, owner of the Edge Athlete Lounge in Chicago, Illinois. Robyn, how you doing?
Hey, what's up? I'm doing well this fine, cold, sunny day.
Yeah, I love that hat. So thank you so much for coming on. You and I have been longtime friends, but also have worked together a little bit in the past. And we were neighbors, right? We both owned gyms within a few miles of each other. So I'm really excited to talk to you today about your business. I think if there's a business, especially in the brick and mortar fitness space, that I would love to have started myself, it's your business. I don't know. I always tell you that, but just so you know, I'm serious.
You want it? If you want to get back into it, we can make a deal.
That's so funny. I love what you guys do. You guys are always on the cutting edge. I have another friend who owns a similar business down in Houston that we'll be having on. But so Robyn, I've already alluded to it. Tell us about your gym. Tell us what you do as an entrepreneur. Just tell us a little bit about you.
Yeah. So Edge Athlete Lounge right here in Chicago. Our whole thing is kind of to be the cheers for athletes. So we want to really create a space for athletes to train, recover, refuel all under one roof in the spirit of helping them become not just better athletes, but better people, which sounds so cheesy, but as a coach, like in my gut, I know like if someone can run a faster 5K, if someone can complete the first marathon, if someone can lift, the heaviest they've ever lifted, you're actually arming them to be able to better sustain during all of life's challenges, right? You're making them a better mother and, spouse, citizen of humanity. So the, thing that we kind of hang our hat on is that we know, just like a lot of micro gyms, we know every person that comes in our door, we know what makes them tick. And, because of that, people, they keep coming. It is where everybody knows your name.
Yeah, 100%. And to kind of put a finer point on it. So you were the first place I ever did any kind of a cold plunge.
Oh, really?
You guys have, yeah.
I didn't know that.
And I had done Wim Hof breathing before that. So I had skipped the cold plunge stuff. But tell us a little bit about the recovery lounge stuff and what you guys do in there and how it helps athletes. And then we'll talk a little bit more about other stuff as well.
Yeah. And the fun little backstory to that of like how we came up with even using the recovery end of things is when we went to do our first Ironman very long time ago now. It was the first time we started training with a group and we really loved, training with a group. I didn't really know not that I didn't think I would, but we had just always solo trained and pretty successfully too. But this was a much bigger mountain to climb. So we're like, let's do it with a group. Yeah. We would get down with these group rides, group runs, train with them for like, 3, 5, 6 hours. And I was like, oh, maybe we'll be sick of them. And the complete opposite happened where we wanted to kind of ride the high and recap. And now we know this term is called social recovery. And so we would go out for like burgers and beer and that's cool. However, in the back of our minds, we were like, there's got to be a better way to do this, right? Yeah. Like there should be something else that we should be doing other than drinking beer and eating burgers. So when we started thinking about what we wanted to make for athletes, we came back to this idea of like a living room or like, like gathering around a campfire at a ski lodge. And what could you do during that time that would not only help with that social recovery, but also make athletes into stronger versions of themselves. And then we actually had someone that we were working with to advise us. And he's like, well, what about all this sports recovery stuff? We're like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
Went down some rabbit holes and ended up with the fact that if you recover using the tools that at the time really only professional athletes had access to, you can take what is normally like a 48 or 60 hour recovery window and bring it down into 30 or 60 minutes. So your body sends some good stuff to help and repair, but it unfortunately sends usually way too much, especially when you're dealing with endurance athletes, which is kind of our bread and butter, our swim, bike, run, triathlon, cyclists, all that good stuff. So if we can get them to hit reset same day, then they can actually do more work the next day and hopefully reduce their chance of injuries, right? Which is ultimately going to help them reach their goals better, which of course is going to help them grow more as an athlete and everybody's happy. And frankly, you just feel less shitty, which is also really important. One of those things with endurance athletes is you just get so used to just being chronically fatigued and sore. And you don't have to feel that way. And I think that that's really important for people to know too. So our recovery space was really what we opened with. And it was 3,000 square feet, hot and cold saltwater plunge pools that can seat up to like 4 to 5 a piece. Those are kept at like 50 and 100 degrees. And then we have this big tufted leather living room around a big fireplace with a wooden, ceiling, pugs running around. And people mainly do compression boots when they're in those for 30 to 60 minutes. We do have like compression core, compression arms, E-stem, all the tools that really, we have in like a whole dresser and they can go and kind of self-serve, or our employees can help them use it as well.
Thank you for sharing all that. A couple of points. Number one, my living room is not just inspired by, but like a direct copy of your
That's right.
lounge.
Remember when I gave you the company's name? I was like, go here.
Yeah. The first time I came in there, your whole place so matched my favorite aesthetic, which was like the reclaimed wood, gritty kind of paneling on the walls, the fireplace, and these beautiful brown leather overstuffed, like Ottoman type or Chesterfield type chairs. So my living room is a direct representation of that. I love, love, love. The thing I like most about brick and mortar, you said micro gym people, is they are these mavens that are like the nexus of their community, right? Like they are connectors of people. They build tribes around them. They have communities and they're always helping people. Oh, you need your car work done. I know a person that works on cars. He's great. He won't overcharge you, whatever it might be. Just that connection point. I've always enjoyed trying to be that myself. And I think the brilliance of you is you've figured out a way to do that in a community of people that are very, very much much higher percentage of them are either working out alone or in very small groups, which is runners and endurance athletes. What gave you, and you kind of already alluded to it, but have there been anything along the way that has helped you to connect and create community in a group of people that maybe hasn't been well known for being community?
I think, we have these mantras that we say kind of over and over at Edge. I wish I could remember who said this. They said it probably the first year we were opened, and it's talking about honoring the sweat bond. So honor the sweat bond basically means that I take elective suffering very seriously. Like I love elective suffering. I love doing things that are very, very hard. And I especially love doing things that are very hard together because as an adult, you are paying for, and you are choosing to do these sports that are not easy, that take up a ton of time. And they can be a solo mission. When you do them with other people, now you have a collective elective suffering. That is the marathon, right? That is what happens on Marathon Sunday. Yeah. It is 45,000 people collectively suffering together. And that's really cool, right? We're choosing to do hard things to become better people. And I actually don't think you have to do that much to connect people when they have those moments. They are very sacred relationships. Yeah. And it's just important that we frankly create a space for it, right? Yeah. We do have this fun little thing that happens at Edge, which we call cross-pollination. And we say it usually when we're talking about like athletes getting into a new sport or a new discipline within their sport. So I love trail running and I will drag people onto trail with me, any chance that I get. And that's a great cross-pollination, right? Because now I'm taking a road runner or a cyclist and I'm getting them into trail running. We see it a lot of times with runners, especially if they've been injured a lot, getting into triathlons. They'll be in the hot tub next to someone in the ice bath being like, what'd you do today? Oh, you did a brick. What's that? Oh, it's a bike and a run. Oh, that sounds like something I could do. Oh, there's a sprint triathlon next weekend. Let me see if I can scrap together some gear. Right. Yeah. And you have those moments, and that really is what makes it. Yeah. And there's not that much work for me to do other than creating the space and really creating the environment. With one big asterisk on all of that though, and we've always said this, it can go douchebag real fast, like real fast, right? Yeah. Because ego is a fickle bitch. And it happens with, this, it happens, in CrossFit, it happens in every sport where people, they can peacock and they come in and they have bravado. And I will tell you that we've had people enter our space with that mentality because they've come from, other groups or other environments that is the baseline. And we just let them know, that's not what we do here. It is Edge Athlete Lounge. Everyone that walks in the door is an athlete. Everyone that walks in the door is an equal athlete. I don't care if it's your first time doing a 5K or you're doing a 200-mile gravel ride. you are the same person.
Mm-hmm.
And as long as you have that continuity of kind of cultural expectation, you don't get the douchebags are tamped down.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, they end up being sometimes some of our best members because they can just relax and be themselves. And it's really cool to see. And it happens so easily. It can tip to the other direction.
Yeah. Well, you know, what's funny. I've been thinking about this a lot over the last
that I'm a
couple of
douchebag.
years. No, but you could be. And that's kind of and I could be too. Maybe I am. The unfortunate thing about being a douchebag is I don't think you can self-identify very well.
I think we're all douchebags some days. Let me be clear.
but the point that I was going to make is, I think we are all similar these days, especially in like urban culture. We're all similar these days in that we are not bound by common ethics anymore. Not to say that I'm pro or anti-religion or anything, but it's very rare, right? That, back in the 50s, we all had this shared ethic and there was all sorts of negative side effects of that, but there were some positive ones. And I think that when you have somebody now, I've heard it multiple times, whether it's yoga or CrossFit or running or triathlons or Krav Maga or Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu or whatever, these are shared. I love sweat bond. I've never heard anybody say that, but I love that. But what that does beyond just giving somebody an exercise and even introducing them to other people is it binds us together with a shared common ethic. And you, Robyn, are the one responsible for your particular version of that shared common ethic. What does a virtuous member of Edge Athlete Lounge behave like? And so somebody may come in having been a headphones and jug of milk water guy and like the steroid, whatever, it could be anything. And they may see like, oh, that just doesn't work here. Well, guess what? They're going to do what does work. And in your community, what does work is like kindness and helping each other out and like going to that extra run on the weekend or whatever it may be, right? And so I just think there's something so special. Even before we started recording, I was telling you like, I am so interested in your story and stories like yours because I do think that our industry in particular has got some very interesting magic that it requires to do well. Why don't we talk a little bit about your personal entrepreneurial story, your personal athletic story? At what point did you, because I know you well enough to tell you that like you're a pretty obvious entrepreneur, you're a pretty obvious like visionary CEO type. And your husband, Brian, also is very entrepreneurial and I love that guy as well. Tell me a little bit about, how early did you know that you might want to be an entrepreneur? Or if you look back, do you see anything reflected in your childhood or anything?
No, it's funny because I actually usually don't use the word entrepreneur.
Okay.
I mean, at least not to necessarily describe me. I'm always like, I didn't come up with fitness, right? We just figured out a way to hook up people together and, have them create something special.
Mm-hmm.
I am not a shy person. So my dad always used to say that. He would like bring me into work with him and be like, she's not shy. And I would just, go and ask his colleagues all these, questions. And
sure.
I was always kind of the, super nerd in that, like my family's all from academia. So like I was always a very diligent student. And because of that, I was always kind of a diligent athlete.
Mm-hmm.
But I also really like, I guess, leading the charge, for lack of a better term, being captain of swim team and track, that was some of my maybe foundational moments.
Yeah.
I'm not scared to like speak in public or, any of those things. I tend to almost like them, which is also kind of weird.
Yeah.
And I'm always thankful for that too. However, if it's like an emotional thing that like at a wedding, oh my God, we've never watched our wedding video because I just sobbed like the whole time. We did like personal vows. I mean, I suck at that. Right.
Yeah.
But if you're asking me to like lead, 1,500 people on a Nike run, I can talk over a microphone and follow a script. No problem.
It's funny. Yeah. I was just going to say, it's funny you say that. I literally cried about an hour ago watching my proposal video from Times Square in New York.
No way.
I actually did. Yeah. I was scrolling through Facebook and it just popped up as, it was one of the more recent events. Yeah. That's so interesting. And it's interesting that you don't identify as an entrepreneur because a couple of the topics that have come up over and over again on these podcasts, this is my 12th one. I don't know what order they'll come out in.
Lucky number 12.
Hey, the next one we'll just skip. We'll do 14. But the thing that's come up over and over again, one of the things is obviously vision. It's seeing the world as it could be and not being able to not take action, right? And that's kind of what you're describing in when you're doing these social events after as part of the recovery. I think that's interesting. The other thing is when there's an opportunity for responsibility, when there's an opportunity to take responsibility, the people that just raise their hand, that's always been me. That's always sounds what you're describing sounds very much like that. And so even if you don't identify as an entrepreneur, certainly you didn't invent fitness, you are shaping the world around you to match a vision that I think is strong, is maybe unstoppable, right? It seems.
I'm a big, like the thing that I really like about being in this space, honestly, is feeling like you're having a direct impact on people. And that 100% is like, our own egos wanting to be like, I'm leaving an impact of the world. But for me, I always think of it like a domino effect. Like I remember very vividly when my coach told me, like, you can train your body to do anything. And I was like, anything? Like, no. And then I remember like during one race, I literally remember the moment where I ran past the athlete that I thought that I was. I remember where I was. I had 10K to go, that very first Ironman. I remember coming off of the bridge and having this gear that I didn't know existed. And I thought, holy shit, you can train yourself to do anything. And because of that, I mean, Ironman's mantra is anything is possible, which is cheesy, but it is true. And as soon as that ended, I was like, I want anyone that wants to feel this way to feel this way. Anyone that's willing to work this hard, I want to give them that moment of like, you can mold yourself into an infinite amount of things as long as it's got to be interesting to you too, right? But man, like that spark, I mean, probably carried me for like 10 years, right? And from a ripple effect, if I can say that to one person, he said that to me once and I remembered it. It is terrifying when people remember as a coach that you tell them, by the way, you're like, I said that. Oh, Jesus. But if you can say that one thing and plant that seed and that person goes and does something incredible, and then you empower the person that you said it to say it to someone else, you now have this like ripple effect that not only goes out, but also starts to grow arms. And that is what I hope to create always and we just sent a newsletter out to our endurance group this week saying like, your job with your New Year's resolution is effectively to get someone else moving, because by nature of being an active person that does hard things, people look up to you, whether or not you want them to or not, they do. And chances are they're too scared to talk to you about it. So it's our responsibility to say, hey, do you want to run a 5K with me? Right. And that's the beginning of a ripple. And for me, like, that's the stuff that I get so excited about. Is I would say I'm a stronger coach than I am an entrepreneur in that sense, because it's awesome, especially to be able to do that for adults, because again, adulting's hard. And I think that like no one tells you that, and you have to be able to have some major wins, again, electively suffering, to have the armor to face the rest of life kind of effectively.
Wow. Yeah. And, there's, even as just we're talking, I'm just seeing connections more and more. I'm understanding why I like you so much. And part of that is like, if I look at my own career from a fitness perspective, I fell in love with fitness, and I'm a evangelist for everything I love. So I have to tell everybody about it, kind of like what you're talking about. I fell in love with fitness. So we started a gym, grew that to several hundred members. So I was impacting my efforts, and the efforts of my partners and staff were impacting several hundred people. And then at that point, I was like, how do I scale is the word in the back of my head. How do I impact more people? Okay, well, we'll start to do some consulting and coaching of other entrepreneurs. So now I'm impacting these entrepreneurs exactly. So now those folks have,
which you're very
tribes.
Good at.
Well, I appreciate that. But to me, it's that thing of the impact of scale. And then, so now what is this? Well, this podcast is the answer to how do I scale that? Because I don't even want to have to charge for it anymore. I would rather make an impact by having a conversation with you, who's going to go out and impact an entire segment of the population, right? I mean, if you think about it, anybody that's listening to this podcast right now, because this is an entrepreneur podcast, and we do have fitness folks on all the time. I say this almost every show, but as an entrepreneur, as somebody that's even thinking about being an entrepreneur, or if you're just my aunt and you decided to listen to this podcast to support me, I appreciate it, or Robyn's cousin or something, that's all good. If you're sitting in an office right now, odds are somebody in your office has run a marathon. And odds are it's probably one of the most important days of their lives. It's probably the thing they're most proud of. It's probably the thing that they bring out when when they want to seem interesting or accomplished, or when they want to think about the things that are good. Well, I've always got that thing where I ran that marathon. Robyn, how many people do you think you've helped to run a marathon?
Well, I know our edge number of athletes that we've helped like come through our doors is over 6,000. So specific, that's not all marathoners though.
Sure.
Got to be a few thousand. If you're talking about edge, it's somewhere probably under 2,000. If you're talking about Nike, it's definitely more than that because their groups were a lot bigger. But that was for like a shorter amount of time. So
give me the big number. How many runners have you run with as a coach that have gone on to run a marathon? I
would say at least 5,000.
Yeah, right. And so to mention that, Robyn, you work with Nike. Can you explain your partnership with Nike?
I'm still always like, how did I get this job? 5 months after opening, I got a phone call and they were saying, hey, we're with Nike Running in Chicago. We're working on something. We'd love to come and talk to you. And little did I know, we used to give these like free clinics when we first started because we just needed people in the door, right? Like, hey, come to our industrial zone gym. It's a cool area. I swear it's free parking. So, lo and behold, a woman named Becky Hurst was in the audience and afterward came up and said, hey, I'm actually from Nike. I want to talk to you about what we're doing. I'm like, okay, I'm listening. And at the time I really was like one employee, open to close. Like Brian was, still in finance at the time. And I was really there all the time. And she told me about this thing called Nike Run Club that was starting, that was going to be at the time, I think they had 5 sessions a week of live programming out of their stores. And the groups were, 100 to 200 people a pop. And I was like, wow, that sounds awesome. I can't do it. Like, there's no way. It's like every single night. And this is what I'm here. Yeah. So then we basically figured out how we could make it work by bringing on a few more coaches to the Nike team. And then also us hiring people so that frankly, I could leave and go and do. And then also with that, they wanted to, get me up and running along with other, coaches in major cities. So this was not just me. We had a team of 4 in Chicago. I think New York had 6. LA had 3 or 4. We had Toronto, Dallas, Portland, all of the major cities in North America. And then eventually it went worldwide too. So they basically flew us around and trained us so that we could shadow other coaches, so that we could learn not only about the brand, but really what it stands for. And specifically at the time related to their women's running movement. For me, it was the best training I've ever had as a coach. I got to spend a lot of time with Coach Chris Bennett, who is the global head coach for Nike, all of Nike Running. At the time, he was based in New York, and now he's based out of Beaverton at World Headquarters. And then I got to go and get flown around and work all of the major events and lead like 1,000-person, shakeout runs prior to marathons or half marathons, or they had a 15K in Toronto. Just being around that many high-level coaches really framed who I wanted to become as a coach. And I realized, to your earlier point, scale. Like if I was able to touch, this many athletes in this single event, what happens then? Like, how do we support them throughout? And eventually Nike, and we knew it would come, they had that type of heavy programming for a couple of years, but eventually they did migrate it over to all app-based. That's all things with Nike, things evolve. Read Shoe Dog if you haven't. Everything makes sense.
I was going to say that when you were done, is Shoe Dog. As an entrepreneur, it's a must read.
They shift it. Yeah. And they shift it. So, I mean, I learned even like they shift people's positions like so severely, and it all makes sense now that I've read that book. So when they got rid of that, they basically, we didn't have any live sessions, and I'm like, well, I guess Edge will start these. So Edge stepped up. And since then, honestly, it's been like 3.5 or 4.5 years that we've done year-round run programming and triathlon programming too. So that's on top of, we always say like inside the walls versus outside the walls. So that's stuff that happens outside of our walls. And, one of the cool things with COVID is that our run club grew by 150% last year, which was super cool to see. People felt very comfortable running outdoors, and also races, thank God, returned. So, we were able to serve more runners than ever before, but honestly, they served each other. Like we just provide, quality programming and meetup locations and coaching, but it's that sweat bond, that happens during those 20-mile runs between those pace groups. That's the whole magic. Yeah. And now with Nike, we get to be, an affiliate of theirs in a lot of ways. Like if they want to know what's happening locally. Like we serve in that capacity. We haven't like posted on this a ton, but I was part of 2.5 years ago. They started the Nike Windrunners, which is a sub-elite all-female racing team here in Chicago. It started off very much as a marathon specific group. It's evolved quite a lot. So with the pandemic stuff, became pretty difficult to do with Nike. And frankly, it still is, unless it's like a major event, like a marathon. So they approached us and said, hey, do you want to take they call it a powered by approach, where it's a little bit different, where Edge would own it. And then Nike would effectively kind of like help just support it, but we could do whatever we want with it. So we quadrupled our coaching staff for that. And just had our most successful year ever, actually. So we're looking to not only diversify our team racially, which frankly needs to happen in the sport of running, but also with distance focus as well. I just had like a 2-hour call with them yesterday, and it was awesome to be able to recap our season so that they know what we've done with running with it, but then also what we plan to do, which also includes a lot of that ripple effect. And we have a great all-female, 100% female-led coaching staff on that too, which is pretty cool. And these women it's really, really cool to see. So there's a cool term out there called the draft horse effect. Have you heard of it?
No, go ahead and tell us.
I heard about it from Amy Craig, who ran with Nike for a while, and she was on a panel, and myself and another coach were the moderators. So we asked her one of our questions. This was right before the marathon a couple of years ago. We were like, okay, so like, why do you train with the team? Right. And she's like, well, it's really the draft horse effect. And then of course I had to go look it up and buy the book that it's in. And she's like, one draft horse alone can pull about 4,000 pounds. Right. I mean, that's what they're bred to do. Right. If you put 2 draft horses together instantly, they will pull up to 16,000 pounds. So they've already doubled it, right? If you take 2 draft horses and train them together, they will learn to pull over 30,000 pounds.
Wow.
And that is not only another iteration of sweat bond, but also that's why you train with people. That's why sports like running, swimming, biking are so much more powerful done in mass, because we will push each other, especially when we learn to train together. You are effectively just overlaying strengths and weaknesses so that if I always buzz out in the 3rd mile, my teammate's going to pull me along, and I'm a really good finisher. I'm going to pull them along then. And that Windrunner team they are the finest example of that. It's awesome.
Wow. I love that. I love that so much. And it's great because it immediately is confirmed by years and years and years of my own experience, right? Whether that's in the military or whether that's in, fitness or strongman or jiu-jitsu, same experience, right? The thing you were mentioning earlier about these groups of people coming together and bonding, and you called it elective, what did you call it?
Elective collective suffering.
Yeah, I love that. But we're evolved for it, right? I mean, we used to hunt by outrunning by attrition. We would outrun animals and cattle, right? I mean, We've hunted and we've fought and we've communed in these small groups of we've bonded forever in difficult groups. There's a book called Tribe. I'm not sure if you've read it, but there's a book called Tribe it's great. And I can't think of the author off the top of my head.
I Google.
Yeah, check it out. And anybody at home, check it out. Speaking of which, you just talked about Chicago Windrunners, I believe was what it was called, which I love that name. You talked about the Nike Run Club and you talked about the Edge stuff. Can you just drop real quick, and I'll put it in the link below, but if somebody's in their car listening to this, where would somebody find each of those 3 organizations if they wanted to do a run near them?
Yeah. So Windrunners, you can always follow. I think it's easiest, honestly, on Instagram. It's just Windrunners Shy, CHI. Edge, you can look on our website, which is just edgeathletelounge.com, or look at our Instagram as well. It has all of our links on there, which is easy, Edge Athlete Lounge. And then Nike Running, I would honestly always just follow them because their app is pretty great. And it has some really great training plans that frankly, like you get for free and I would charge you for. And you can connect with people through there too, which is frankly, it's the thing that we really need right now.
Today's show is brought to you by High Level CRM. High Level is an all-in-one platform designed to help entrepreneurs grow their businesses without the need for multiple softwares or an IT team. Not only does their easy-to-use software allow you to track and manage your leads throughout each phase of the relationship, but it also allows you to build funnels, track stats, and more. Guys, I sat down and added up the cost of software I was able to replace with just one app, and it was over $1,000 per month. Because this is an all-in-one application, I also save a ton of headaches connecting apps and building automations, and the team at Go High Level does a great job of getting you started quickly and easily when you sign on. I cannot more highly recommend these guys. Right now, Spear and Clover listeners get a free 14-day trial of High Level CRM for themselves. Click the link in our show notes to support the show and get started on your free 14-day trial today. Today's show is brought to you by Scaling with Media. I mean, literally, like if it weren't for the folks at Scaling with Media, you would not be getting this. Scaling with Media is a truly revolutionary company for any entrepreneur who wants to reach a larger audience without taking on the years of experience necessary to master the required skills. These guys do it all. From helping you develop your creative plan to editing, sourcing content, copywriting, ads management, and way more. Whether you're looking to launch a YouTube channel or podcast, or you just want to scale your business out to more eyeballs, these guys are the absolute best one-stop shop. But that's not all. Right now, Spear and Clover listeners who sign up for their brand launch package will receive a free, that's right, free professional grade studio kit that I'm actually recording right now on. The studio kit includes a professional microphone, stand, lighting, and headphones, and is worth well over $500. Take action now by going to scalingwithmedia.com/spear and claim your free studio kit. Again, that's scalingwithmedia.com/spear, scalingwithmedia.com/spear. Now back to the show. Moving on to the next thing, as I was listening to you, I'm thinking, wow, how great is it? Because I don't know, listen, these are things that I should have thought about before, Robyn. I've failed up until this conversation.
We've all failed.
I'm finally waking up, for God's sake. No, as you were talking, I was like, isn't it great that part of my job, I used to always describe part of the job of a CrossFitter is to teach people how to do things that they previously thought were impossible, right? Like the easy ones like handstands or muscle ups or something, right? But either way, depending on the level of the athlete. That's one of the things I loved about my job. But there's this benefit as being an entrepreneur. You see people train their bodies to do something that they previously couldn't do and do something that previously they thought was impossible. How does that benefit? Do you think that makes you maybe a little more kind of stalwart in your vision and view as a business owner and as the sort of tribal leader of Edge?
That's a good question. I guess I haven't really thought about that. For me, I always look at things as never done or never good enough. I am not the coach or the entrepreneur that's going to give you the gold star. I don't give myself the gold star either. Like, I think, those milestones should be celebrated, but then I think you should immediately turn around and say, what else can I do? And also now, how else can I inspire someone else to do it? Mm-hmm. So I think for me, my big thing is how to get people to level up once they've achieved that. And it just comes from like a hunger, right? It comes from a hunger within. Mm-hmm. And then of course, like the real fun of that is like, how do you make money on that ultimately so that you can stay open, right? And I would say that's been, maybe the tougher thing, especially in the last 2 years of like, wow, it's kind of like it's a slippery answer.
Yeah. And that's fair. I would also add that if you are a brick and mortar fitness business, and especially if you're in a city and you still exist, and as we record this, it's January of 2022, well, then you've already won because it's been maybe the worst possible operating environment. We've already made it. So you can kind of go be anything you want to be or just keep doing the damn thing. So, another thing I wanted to point out, because we share this as well, dogs, baby. We both have dogs that are, I don't own a brick and mortar gym, or I'm not active in a brick and mortar gym anymore. But when I did, both of us have a culture that have dogs in it, which obviously, whatever you feel about dogs, both of us huge dog lovers, is a little bit out of the norm. So, why was it important to you to establish that kind of a culture where you would have your dogs there, where you would be a little bit different than maybe what somebody might expect walking in?
Yeah, I mean, you have like athletic dogs. I do not. When we
Which is funny because I'm closer to a pug than you, and you're certainly closer to an Australian Shepherd.
Oh, I love those pugs. Yeah, I think honestly, it just started with kind of convenience. And when we first opened, we had 2 senior pugs, Bruce and June, who were just the best. I mean, Bruce, he will always be my best dog ever. Oh, let me clear this so that you can see him. So he's my guy he has no eyes, he's just like blind, doesn't give a fuck, like always going to find the bacon, really just kind of like a beacon of like what I always was like, if he can do it, I can do it. Yeah. And then we had little Junie too, who was just like super tiny and sassy and basically ran the show. So couple that with, a facility that honestly looks a lot like a living room. And, it was pretty easy to do. Now, we're on to Pugs 2.0, which I don't know if you know this, but we now have 3.
I know that one of them is Pearl, right?
Pearl, yeah.
One of mine
that's right. You have Pearl. That's right. Full circle. Yeah. And you have Lucy June, and June is our first one. You're true. Right. We are connected in a whole bunch of ways.
We got to hang out more.
I had an athlete. This is a sweet story. When Bruce passed, I coach him personally. His name is Alex Locke, and he's just one of my favorite humans of all time. And he's looked at me. Oh my goodness. I love him. And he said to me, Robyn, I know you're really sad, but he's like, I will tell you, there is still so much joy to be had. I know you don't know it right now, but there is. And I was like, what a wonderful thing. And of course he raced like a week after Bruce passed, and he put for Bruce on the back of his coat.
Oh, that's sweet.
Oh, it's one of my favorite pictures that I have. So, fast forward to losing both dogs back to back. And really, honestly, our communities were incredibly supportive, doesn't even cut it. Like they grieved with us. Right. And so we had 2 boys. We always had a boy and a girl. We could not find it in our hearts to get a girl when we lost our second one. So we got a boy in the middle of COVID. Duke is a freaking doofus. He's so funny. We have 2 clowns at this point. Right.
Yeah.
And I told Brian, I was like, I miss having a girl. I'm not going to get rid of these dogs. Either of these dogs. I love them too much, but could we handle a third? And we're like, oh, we don't want 3 dogs. And then Alex popped up, Robyn, there's still so much joy to be had. And I was like, maybe the good of the 3 can outweigh all the extra work. Right. And we were really nervous, but we did it anyway. And I'm so glad that we did. And I can go get Pearl. Hold on.
If you can hear me, I'll go ahead.
I can. No, my computer's right here.
We just had our 6-month, we have a 6-month-old at home, Lucy, as you alluded to. And Donna had to actually explicitly tell me not to buy her a surprise dog for Christmas because I was literally.
You don't want 3 dogs and a baby.
I do. And it's terrible.
My gosh.
And it's wrong, but I do. So, back to kind of the,
here she is. Hold on. Hold up.
Sweetie.
I have a guest.
So back to the business stuff. So it's interesting to me. It keeps coming back into my head that you don't view yourself as an entrepreneur. So I guess the question, maybe this will help me to kind of understand it a little better. Why don't you work for Nike corporate or do something for somebody else where there's not, because I know, not even specifically to you, though I do know to you and to many other people, I know hundreds of brick and mortar gym owners, the toil, the risk, the struggle, I told somebody the other day who had a short team, I was like, it's like you're racing a NASCAR race and you only have 4 tires. Like if one disappears, can't go any further.
Yeah, that's a great way to say it.
So why not do this from a corporate perspective where probably you could make more money and you could maybe impact a similar number of people? Why choose to do your own thing?
That's not to say that I wouldn't consider that, right? I think, originally we did it because someone hadn't done it yet, right? Mm-hmm. It's like no one as an athlete. I mean, I was coaching, but I wasn't super heavy into coaching yet. We knew that there was a void in the market to really serve athletes on a level that we had not been served yet.
Yeah.
And that was very appealing to us. I think it was a pretty obvious void though, which is again, why I'm like, I don't think it was that entrepreneurial. We just, we had the gumption to actually do it. I mean, I'm game for anything as long I see myself as a coach before I see myself as a business person, because I think that I'm naturally better at that, but that doesn't mean that I don't gain a lot, learning how to navigate and grow a business.
Well, and that answer is so in line with what this podcast stands for, right? The Spearing Clover is all about, letting your passion kind of set the course a little bit for yourself. And so that's refreshing to hear. And I don't think that's bad at all. I think that's fantastic. I have I wouldn't call him a friend, but somebody that I've met a few times, Jason Kalipa, who is a CrossFit Games winner and very interesting guy. He owns, I don't know what the number is now, but dozens of gyms that are in corporate locations for Silicon Valley companies. And they did studies, and the folks that were attending CrossFit classes during their lunch breaks were you could measure quarterly performance improvements
Interesting.
quarter over quarter
I'm not
inside
surprised.
the business. Pretty sure he was friends with, or one of his clients maybe was the CFO of, forget the tech firm, and I probably wouldn't say it anyway. But at that point, this was 5 years ago. At that point, he had already had, I think, 20 different gyms worldwide in China and all over the world. And they had done the numbers. They had ran the numbers. And so folks like you that you're working with, there is a measurable improvement to your performance at work, to the way you think, the way that you relate to people. Man, cut me off when I'm driving to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and then cut me off again when I'm driving home from Brazilian
Completely
Jiu-Jitsu.
different person.
Totally different person.
Which I think for me, again, as a coach, the last 2 years have been exceedingly difficult because I see people becoming complacent and giving up. And, and I get it. It's a messed up time, but I'm like, this is the time that you need this more than ever. So for you to walk away from it now, I'm like, how do I motivate you? Right? That's the stuff that keeps me up at night, right? It's not, can I pay my rent? It's this person canceled and I can't get it out of my mind because they need this, right? Yeah. They just got to where they wanted to get to and they have to keep going.
Yeah. I have the same feeling. And there's one of the ways that I've articulated it before is I know how it I know I feel better when I eat healthy. I know that I literally fell in love with my wife. I love meal prepping. I love cooking healthy food. I enjoy the taste of it. I know that my performance is better. I know that I feel better when I work out, and I own a fucking gym.
Right.
And I consistently will fall off of that wagon. Yeah. And so like, I think if there's something, I don't know if it's a question that I'll ever answer, but it is one of life's questions for me. Is like, how do we remember to continue doing those things that we know we love? And how do you make an impact on somebody when they fall off or when they don't act in their own best interest? And I just don't know, I don't know if you have an answer for that, but I certainly would. Yeah, exactly.
I did. I think I was really good at it. And we were really good at it kind of pre-COVID, but I think every iteration of this as it evolves just requires a completely new set of answers.
Yeah.
And at some point it'll get simpler and we can kind of revert back to our old tactics, but it is a very, very, very different, it's a very different climate. But, to Alex Locke's point, I still do think that there's still so much joy to be had. And we have to have this shitty last 2 years to compare it to realize just how good we have it in the future. I mean, we know that just like a marathon, you have to have your terrible races, your terrible miles in order to have the high of when it goes perfectly. And I'm sorry, I talk about marathons a lot because I'm around a lot of marathoners. Yeah. 1 in 7 marathons goes to plan. 1 in 7. And that doesn't even guarantee that you have a personal record. 1 in 7. When we talk about things like weather, not being injured, nutrition going right, it not being too crowded, you being able to find your pace group, 1 in 7. So like 2 shitty years back to back. Okay. Like if we're looking at a 1 in 7 odds, that's not so bad.
Yeah. I love that. I like that perspective. And then, just to put a period on the end of that thought from before, one of the best ways, if you know that you're going to have ups and downs, one of the absolute best ways to stick with it is to go into a community like yours where there's bonds aside from just the pain, right? And so that way, if you do start to fall off, there's 10 friends that are looking for you at that 5 o'clock class, right?
Yeah.
My training partner right now, I would not, and I don't even have his phone number. I would not let him down knowing that he's going to be expecting me to be there to train with him, Monday or whatever.
You know what? I'm going to answer your question from earlier. I think the way that you get people moving again is accountability.
Yeah,
and
I agree.
It is either financial accountability or it is accountability to someone else. And I think that it is the thing that all of us need. So I broke my foot during COVID. I don't know if you know that. So I tore my capsule, which it was very weird. I was doing a lunge demonstration. I tore my capsule on my toe and I broke the top of my foot. So woe is me. Right. And came back, except for I didn't say that. I was just like, fuck it. I'm in a boot. Let's do this. So I come back from it and I'm not going to lie. I was scared to run again because I don't really get injured very much. So it's like, how did this happen? And of course it was COVID and no vitamin D and all of the above. So I started using an app that was a betting app and I'm still using it today, that basically I put money down. It's not even that much money on being able to complete a program. And I have to log it. And then it auto updates, it gives me a little green check until I'm all the way through. And then I win my money back and any money back of anyone else who didn't complete it. And it really was the thing that got me moving again. And I've always said this, like it was the accountability of it. Right. Mm-hmm. And I think it's really important that we figure out, like for me, I didn't necessarily want to answer to anyone, but I did want to answer to something. And that was a really good linchpin for me. And then eventually it was that, I had people waiting for me on trail and then you got to meet them there. I think everyone feels like they're in a free fall right now. So it is kind of like our ice pick, right? As we're climbing or learning to reclimb the mountain.
I love that. I really do. And I think what may not be obvious to everybody listening is that when you do own a gym or when you do, lead a group of people in a certain thing, it's really difficult to find a coach that you can be held accountable to. And so that's an interesting tip that you have there. So there's 2 questions that I ask everybody that comes on the show. And the first of those questions is, if you had access to unlimited cash, how would you grow your business, your current business, profitably?
Oh, I would first figure out how to effectively advertise on a very large scale. So complete overhaul of, website, making sure that, you're not just flushing down the money down the toilet on Facebook advertising. So investing significantly in effective advertising. And then on the flip side of that, I would invest even more in my coaching staff and not only grow it with even more superstars, but I would learn how to support them as much as I humanly could so that they could have maximum impact on their athletes. One of the things that I'm the proudest of that I had no clue we would do with Edge is growing a coaching staff. So we're up to 12. Wow. And it's really cool to be able to see again that ripple, right? Like they can effectuate so much more change than I ever could as a single coach. And I'm not even coaching them. They're like coaching themselves and coaching each other. And that evolution of the business has been incredibly fulfilling to me personally. And so investing, I know that the secret is in investing in them. They are the leaders.
Yeah. And I think that's a really terrific answer. I have a follow-up for it. Do you think that what you do scales? Do you think that you would ever consider doing something like what you do, whether it's in coaching or programming or community building, that isn't bound by your geographic area?
I absolutely would. I would say that I would need somebody running my brick and mortar at 100% before doing that. But I actually think personally that I would flourish as an entrepreneur and as a coach if I didn't have that brick and mortar. So yeah. Sure.
Well, shout out to all those.
Are you giving me unlimited cash?
Well, shout out to all those angel investors listening to this wildly popular podcast. This is the 12th one, so we probably are floating right around 1 million downloads a month at this point. Anyway, second question is, if you had to close all the businesses that you've ever been associated with and start something totally new that's not related to those things, or that's not the same. I need to figure out how to ask that question better. If you had to start a totally new business tomorrow, what do you think that might be? What would be interesting?
So not fitness-based or fitness-based?
Not fitness-based.
I've always been like, wow, it would be super cool to do something that's a consumable and something that I'm passionate about. And my favorite food in the whole world is pickles. So it is, and I love them. And I think they're really great for athletes too. I mean, there's a lot of pickle juice studies out there too. So basically coming up with like a pickled, either online or have it in person. I mean, they have these in Manhattan, right? Where they have these huge vats and you go in and you pay by the pound and it almost becomes like this tradition that people do for their holidays. I would love to get in on that because it is
so cool.
Pickling is not hard, but it is a magical thing. And I would be a little worried it would take the joy of it away from me. Just, making it into a business, but I actually think it's pretty lucrative.
Yeah. And I don't disagree with that. I think the theme that I've heard on those answers for question number 2 from everybody has been, it's divided either into, things like bars and things around community. And a lot of folks, because most of the people I've spoken with were in some version of service so far, not in all fitness, but some version of service. And the thing that has been the theme is either I've always wanted to own a bar or restaurant or something around community, or the other one, which I get. And then the other one is I want to own a manufacturing. I want to make a thing. I want to make a consumable or a product or whatever that is. And I think part of that, because I feel that as well, both of those answers I identify with. And I think part of that is as service people, the grass, it seems a little greener over there, doesn't it? It's like,
Absolutely.
Man, if I just made pickles, like people wouldn't yell at me so much.
Yeah. It just seems simpler. Yeah. It seems simpler. Well, because it's not, what do is very emotional, right? Like it's very heavy and there can be some pretty amazing days. And then there can be some very, very hard days. I take very seriously. I always say the coach athlete relationship is incredibly sacred and it is incredibly privileged. And when that athlete doesn't hit their goal, I take on responsibility for that. I put that on myself. No one else needs to tell me to do that. I say, what could I have done better? The heaviness of that responsibility is sometimes a little much, especially when you're coming off of a couple hard years. So that is the appeal of pickles, Jason.
I get that. That's going to be a quote.
Those pickles aren't going to talk back.
The appeal of pickles. Because to your point, with the thing you just described, I have described that in the past to clients as, you're acting as the variable between your clients and their results, or you're acting as a variable between your clients and reality, or whatever it may be. But there is this thing where as relationship-based service type entrepreneurs, especially charismatic leaders of communities like you are, it's almost like social media. Like it's one thing to find out that one person got in a car accident. It's another thing to open your phone and see that 10 million people got into a car accident.
Yeah.
And so it's like you're multiplying this small community thing that makes you an empathetic person, that makes you a leader, that makes you somebody who's invested in the people that they, spend time with and relate to, but you're magnifying it by hundreds. And so I see that. And I think that the first step into making that better, aside from like systemization and great staff, is to recognize that, hey, I'm the variable between me and my clients and their results, or whatever that case might be in that circumstance. If I put too much weight on this one, I can't do it for the other 200 or whatever.
It's true.
And so you just got to keep that in mind. I think that that's a healthy way to go about it. And it's something that, the best fitness and the best relationship entrepreneurs, I think they either have an intuitive or a very deliberate way of managing that.
I also think too, that you always have athletes that require more or less attention. Like on my roster in any given year, and it can totally change if someone is being, more needy, rightfully so, or not rightfully so, it is always balanced with someone that's being low may. Right. And, I know that. So I used to like react to my high maintenance and get like really anxious about it, of like, oh my God, what if they all turn into this and then I can't handle it? And then all of a sudden my roster is full and I can't do this and run a business. And now I have the patience of process of knowing, okay, this one's high may, this one, thank goodness for this one being low may. And now I know that my energy is much more balanced.
And I think the anxiety is eliminated just by you knowing that.
Oh,
right?
Absolutely.
Because in
now
the moment,
it's like, okay, that's what's happening. Right. And then, coaches on our staff, when that happens, I'm like, okay, well, this is, this is what you're going to see. And then they're like, oh yeah, that's true. I'm like, yeah, it's true. Yeah, it is true. Yeah. Otherwise we'd all be out of business.
Well, two things. One, I am not surprised. I am really happy that we got together and talked today. Robyn, your story is great. I would love to have you back on in the future. We're going to be doing, when we have recurring guests, we're going to bring them on to discuss topics, either one-on-one or with other guests. I would love to have you back on. I think you have a really terrific business. I think you have a really terrific perspective on life. And I think you articulate it really, really well. Two, my challenge to you is to produce 1 jar of pickles. And I would like that first jar.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I can do that next week.
All right. So before we sign off, where can people find you? Where can people find Edge? Where can people find Nike one more time? And we'll also put the links in the notes.
Yeah, totally. You can find me. Instagram's always best, at Coach Robyn. So it's Coach dot and then Robyn with a Y. So ROBYN. Edge is at edgeathletelounge.com. Or if you want to go to our website, edgeathletelounge.com, same. And then Nike Windrunners is going to be Windrunners Shy. So CHI on the end. And you can't forget the Pugs. They have their own Instagram. So it's at Pug Covery. So just like recovery, but Pug Covery. Definitely my favorite account to manage.
Yeah. And for me, that's The Adventures of Ruby and Pearl on Instagram. We have that one as well. Well,
I'm following
Robyn, them. Please do.
I'm going to.
Robyn, again, I really appreciate it. Next time we'll have Brian come on as well.
Thank
you so much for everything you do. And on behalf of your clients, keep being a part of the best day of those folks' lives, because I think it's really important what you're doing.
We'll get there. Many a marathons to happen.
Thank you guys so much for watching or listening to the show. If you enjoyed the show, please don't forget to show us some love by liking, rating, and subscribing so we can keep making more and better content. If you'd like to support the show and get a great additional content like exclusive shows and even live group masterminds, please head over to patreon.com/Spear and Clover to become a member of the tribe. If you're interested in learning more about how we help entrepreneurs, visit spearingclover.com or message us on any of our platforms. Thanks again, and we'll see you soon.